Lost media is something that continues to entice us for so many different reasons. But sometimes the intrigue doesn't lie in the media itself or the timeline of its discovery, but rather how it was discovered. Every now and then, a piece of lost media will be found in an incredibly bizarre or coincidental way. These are the ones that stick in my head, and today we'll be going through them. For this video, I won't be covering those that I've already made mini documentaries on, such as Clockman or Cracks. But anyways, let's take a look at pieces of lost media that were found in the strangest ways. Conflict, Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Rarely would somebody expect to hear that an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was pulled from syndication because of violent and disturbing topics. But it happened. Oh, sort of. In November of 1983, a 5-arc episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood aired titled, Mr. Rogers Talks About Conflict. This episode was made in direct response to the ABC telefilm titled The Day After, a film that featured graphic nuclear war imagery.
Hello, I'm John Cullum. In this evening's ABC theater presentation of The Day After, I play a father in a typical American family who experienced the catastrophic events of a full-scale nuclear war. Before the movie begins, we would like to caution parents about the graphic depiction of nuclear explosions and their devastating effects. The emotional impact of these scenes may be unusually disturbing, and we are therefore recommending that very young children not be permitted to watch.
It starts off like any normal episode of Mr. Rogers would. But things get a little strange when we visit the neighborhood of make-believe. King Friday becomes suspicious of all the parts that are coming out of Corny's factory and sends Negri over to investigate. Meanwhile, we cut to Prince Tuesday at school, where they're learning about war. Most kids are horrified, while Prince Tuesday seems kind of into the idea of it. Upon going home, he finds his father, the king, looking over the parts they intercepted from the factory, believing it to be a bomb.
Has Southwood ever had a war?
I think they did once, long ago.
Well, then they know how.
Yes, I guess they do know how.
To build bombs and make bullets and make all kinds of bad stuff to hurt people.
Oh, Tuesday, I don't think a little part like this could ever be a part of a bomb or
Never
anything like
know.
That's right. This could be the part of a bomb.
The second episode continues the story, with the king continuing to spiral into paranoia over the fact that this might be a bomb. Eventually, the king jumps to conclusions and assumes that Southwood is over there making 1,000,000 bombs. So then the king starts wanting to make their own bombs.
Don't you want this neighborhood to be protected? If Southwood is building bombs, we must do the same.
Why?
Well, because it's just the thing to do.
But Uncle Friday, we don't even know the people of Southwood.
We know that they might be building bombs.
After this episode, things escalate, and lessons about air raids and gas masks are taught. But in the end, everything is shown to be blown out of proportion, as Southwood was really just making a bridge. The issue is completely resolved. King Friday takes all the bomb parts and turns them into a record player for the school, and Mr. Rogers concludes the arc by saying, "Rules are very, very important. Not just for games, but for all things. Even big things like countries. Countries have to have rules to protect people too. And someday, you'll be helping to make the rules for your country. I trust that you'll make the best kind you know how." The episodes were removed from rotation on April 5th, 1996, due to its content and talks of war in the media. The episodes remain lost until May 20th, 2017, when, out of nowhere, the first 2 episodes were uploaded to the YouTube channel Trog Sleep Now. Then, less than 1 month later, the entire 5-episode arc was uploaded to a private torrent tracker called MySpleen by a user named Snowpeck. Since then, the entire arc was restored by Lost Media Wiki user YoshiKiller2S and uploaded to MySpleen and the Internet Archive, which fixed many audio and saturation issues. So, what makes this so interesting? Well, for starters, no one knows anything about the Trog Sleep Now channel. The channel is actually still around to this day. They never uploaded any other videos, and they've since deleted the Mr. Rogers episodes. It's as if the channel existed for the sole reason of uploading them. The timing is also strange. I mean, why now after all these years? Well, one theory is linked to former President Donald Trump, and slashing of public broadcasting in favor for more military spending. Releasing a lost episode that speaks specifically about the dangers of war seems apt, almost like a warning of things to come. It's possible this is all just a coincidence, but the timing seems a little too convenient. Nevertheless, it's a win for lost media restoration, and remains a personal favorite of mine. Metropolis. Metropolis is a film that is no stranger to any film major. This 1927 German expressionist film is seen as one of the pioneers of the science fiction genre, and is among the first feature-length film in said genre. The original film at the time of its release was met with a mixed reception. It was applauded for its groundbreaking special effects, but was criticized for its story having an alleged communist message. It was also criticized for its incredibly long runtime. The original German version clocked in at about 153 minutes. So to appeal to a more international audience, it was cut down from 2.5 hours to an hour and a half, with many plot-relevant scenes getting chopped, along with several important characters. The film, as a result, became something of a mystery for those who saw it after the cuts were made, as it was pretty hard to tell what the plot was actually supposed to be about without these important scenes and characters. Unfortunately, upon being cut from its original length, many of the deleted scenes were lost to time, never to be seen again. Or so we thought. Almost a century later, in 2008, a film collector in Argentina revealed that they had a copy of the original 153-minute version of the film, although it was heavily damaged. It turns out that this film collector had been loaning his copy of the film to theaters for years this entire time, and Argentinians have been watching the original cut of the film unknowingly. There was talk going around that theater employees had to wait 2.5 hours for the film to finish, and now it makes sense why. The copy of the film was badly damaged, thanks to it being printed on 16mm positive stock, while the original negatives were on 35mm film. Due to the amount of damage involved, restoring the film became one of the biggest film restoration attempts in history. 2 years later, in 2010, Kino Films and the F.W. Murnau Foundation showed off the 99% complete restoration and released it on DVD as The Complete Metropolis. However, it remains at 99% complete, as, unfortunately, there are 2 scenes that are far too damaged to be restored, those being a scene of a monk preaching in a chapel, and another scene of a fight between the characters Ra Wang and Fredersen. So, what makes it interesting? It still remains unknown exactly how or why the original German film ended up in Argentina, and remained so hidden for all these years. The copy was made at some point in the 1960s or 70s, but how or why still remains a mystery. Perhaps someday we'll learn why, but for now we can celebrate the return of the birth of sci-fi, and one of the greatest films ever made. Doctor Who. Doctor Who is infamous for being a series that has a ton of missing episodes. Despite being a massive media franchise, to this day there are still episodes that remain missing. In fact, most of the BBC's programming from the 1930s to the 1970s remains lost to this day, thanks to junking, which was when old videotapes and film recordings were destroyed in order to make room for new media recorded on new formats. Unfortunately, due to these practices, 97 episodes of the original series remain lost to this day. The only thing that remains for many of these episodes are single stills or audio tracks. Most of these lost episodes were during the run of the second Doctor, with a handful of the first Doctor episodes missing as well. However, the number of lost episodes was originally much larger, and a few have been found here and there in the strangest ways. While video recording at the time was in its infancy, it was still being done. A few episodes were first discovered in Devon, England, when a 12-year-old boy at the time had meticulously recorded some of the early episodes in his bedroom, not even allowing his mother inside so he can get the cleanest audio. The next set of episodes were found in Nigeria. During the 60s and 70s, the BBC sold many episodes of Doctor Who to overseas stations for broadcast. These stations would often destroy their own copies as well, so it's really a miracle that any survived, especially since they were found in Nigeria, whereas their original destination for delivery was actually Hong Kong. It's unknown how these episodes made their way to Nigeria, but good thing they did, or else they might have been lost forever. Some other lost episodes were found in an abandoned BBC building in Villiers House, Ealing. After the company had left the building, one employee decided to double check once more to make sure everything had been taken out, and found 2 episode recordings left behind in a forgotten back room. If that wasn't weird enough, a few episodes were even found randomly in the basement of a church in London. Now, the mystery behind why these episodes were found in this church basement is perhaps the most intriguing bit surrounding Doctor Who Lost Media. There were rumors that this church was once a building previously owned by the BBC, and that's why the episodes were found there. However, the Doctor Who fan site, Broad WCast, I believe, delved deep into this mystery in order to find the truth behind it all. Early reports and news stories never made mention of the church building being formerly owned by the BBC. That's an aspect that's introduced much later in the narrative. While many news stories reported different facts, almost in a game of telephone to see which parts got distorted, almost all of them stated that the church was once a Mormon church located in London. It's believed that these episodes, alongside an episode of a different series titled Warship, were being sent to the Australian Broadcasting Commission, or the ABC. They were most likely found in the Mormon church basement, but it's believed it was never truly a BBC building at any point in time. The church was built in 1978, and the episodes were found in 1983, so they would have had to be placed there during a very small window of time. Other details became murkier and murkier, such as who was it that found the episodes? What else was in the film canisters? How did the canisters get there? All of this could have been prevented had the BBC just had the foresight to see just how big and important Doctor Who would be one day, and simply not destroy their episodes. But at least it makes for an interesting topic. SCP-173. Up until now, we've mostly covered films, episodes of TV shows, and other various forms of lost media. But I don't think I've ever covered a lost 4chan post. Well, here we are. This lost 4chan post was about SCP-173, which would eventually lead to the incredibly popular SCP Foundation. For reference, the SCP Foundation is a fictional organization all about containing and documenting various entities, individuals, locations, and objects that violate the natural law and order of space, time, and physics that we know of. Despite the Foundation growing and thriving, the original post became lost for over a decade. The original post was posted on the 4chan's X board on June 22, 2007. The post described procedures needed to safely contain a paranormal statue that could move and attack people when it's not being looked at. If that sounds similar to a certain episode of Doctor Who, well, that's because it is. On June 9th, 2007, a few days before the 4chan post, an episode of Doctor Who titled Blink aired, which introduced the creatures known as the Weeping Angels. The Weeping Angels are living statues that can attack when they're not being looked at, hence the title of the episode being Blink. The concept of these creatures is incredibly similar to the ones being described in SCP-173, and the original post dates line up with the airing of the episode in June of 2007. This is something that members of the Foundation have argued about for years, with some members saying the post was before the Doctor Who episode, despite there being no proof to back that up. Due to the nature of the website, 4chan does not archive any of its threads, and after a few days, they are deleted, so that new threads can take their place. Unless they're externally archived or have screenshots taken of them, most of these threads end up being lost to time. Due to its significance in the Foundation and its fandom, many searched high and low for anything that remained of the original threads for years, scouring several archives such as Yotsuba Society, Chan Archive, and many X-thread dumps in the Internet Archive, but to no success. However, everything changed on October 8th, 2018, as it turns out that Jason Scott of the Internet Archive just so happened to have an archive of a whopping 10 million threads from 4chan, just sitting around for some reason. He uploaded them onto the Internet Archive, and then a user known as DasMeimei steeped through and found the original SCP-173 post, and uploaded it to the SCP Foundation subreddit, ending a decade-long search for the post that started it all. Thank God Scott had these posts, but why did he have them in the first place? And why did he sit on them for so long? We'll probably never know, but at least for now, this mystery is solved. Wake and Fright. This Australian-American film from 1971 was a thriller based on the 1961 novel of the same name by Kenneth Cook. The film received favorable reviews, but was an absolute financial bomb in both Australia and America, partially due to poor marketing, but mostly due to some incredibly distasteful content. In the film, there's a scene where multiple kangaroos are shot to death in a cruel manner. This footage was taken during a real kangaroo hunting cull, where the hunters hired for the scene were said to be heavily intoxicated, which explains the messy and disturbing way they killed the kangaroos. This disturbed the film crew so much that they orchestrated a fake power outage as an excuse to wrap up filming for the day. The film also had additional controversy in Australia due to its depiction of the outback locals being brash, drunk hedonists. Since the film was completely despised by audiences in both markets it released in, almost every copy in print vanished, and the film's distributor, Group W, went bankrupt, leading to several of the master negatives to disappear as well. With the original versions of the film disappearing, the only way to watch it in any form for decades was through a heavily censored version on rare TV airings, or on incredibly obscure VHS releases. A version was discovered in Dublin, Ireland in the early 90s, but it was so heavily damaged that it was beyond restoration. It truly seemed like this film was completely lost to time, and it sounded like nobody would truly care if it went missing. That is, except for the original editor of the film, Anthony Buckley, who refused to let it go. He began his quest for the film in 1994, searching far and wide for an uncut, high-quality print of the original film, and it wasn't until 8 years later, in 2002, that his search finally paid off. After traveling to Pittsburgh, Buckley amazingly discovered the original negatives in a warehouse stashed away inside a shipping container marked "For Destruction." He later learned that had he not found those negatives, they would have been destroyed 1 week later. With the original negatives in hand, the restoration process could finally begin, and 7 years later, the fully restored film was finally finished, and premiered at the 2009 Sydney Film Festival to pretty good reviews. It's hard to say whether or not the reviews were simply for the amazing restoration effort, or for the film itself, because at its screening at the Cannes Film Festival in 2009, many audience members walked out in disgust at the scenes of kangaroos getting shot. Wake and Fright may not have been a film anybody really wanted or was fond of, but it was thankfully found. Moments before destruction. The Passion of Joan of Arc. Up until now, none of these entries have had much easiness behind them. They've mostly been curious, confusing, or enticing mysteries. But The Passion of Joan of Arc is different. This silent French film from 1928 by Carl Theodor Dreyer was an incredibly innovative and influential film for the time it came out, featuring new camera shots and angles that become standard today, like the close-up. The film made a huge impact on cinema, and is to this day considered one of the most impressive and powerful films ever made, especially with the portrayal of Joan of Arc herself, played by Renee Jeannie Falconetti. Despite being so highly regarded and influential, the film came under fire for its harsh portrayal of the British Church. As a result of this, many theaters refused to show it, and as such, very few copies were printed. Due to its silver nitrate composition, many copies burned up during various studio fires over the years, and the last known copy was thought to have been destroyed during a lab fire in 1929. While the master copy had been burned away, a 61-minute version was able to be spliced together using spare footage and alternate takes. Although this version was not looked upon highly and was really only used for educational purposes. Sadly, Carl Theodor Dreyer passed away in 1968, believing that his film would forever be lost. However, the story begins to take a mysterious turn in 1981, where a 35mm nitrate print of the film was found in perfect condition in a storage closet of a mental hospital. After the film was discovered, it was sent away to the Norwegian Film Institute, where it was put in storage yet again. 3 years later, in 1984, it was finally determined that the print included the original cut of the film, and given its pristine condition, only required about 1 year of restoration to be brought to snuff. After its restoration in 1985, the film was released on home video and has been widely available since. But even after all this time, the question still remains: how and why did the film end up in a storage room of a mental hospital? There's no explanation, no answer, nothing. And it seems as though we may never get an answer. Mickey Mouse in Vietnam. Disney, and especially Mickey Mouse, are no stranger to bootleg or satirical cartoons. Everybody knows who Mickey Mouse is, so using him to get a message across, be it political, critical, or downright disturbing, is an easy way to get yourself noticed. Just look at Escape from Tomorrow or SuicideMouse.avi. However, once Disney's lawyers catch even a whiff of these films, you can expect them to disappear fast. While never proven, many people believe that's the case with the 1968 film Mickey Mouse in Vietnam. Created by the duo of Lee Savage, who's actually the father of Adam Savage from Mythbusters, and Milton Glaser, creator of the iconic I Love New York logo, the film is actually titled Short Subject, but is often referred to as just Mickey Mouse in Vietnam, and was made in protest of the ongoing war in Vietnam. Clocking in at just over a minute, the short stars Mickey Mouse and his classic appearance after he was recruited to join the army and is sent to the war-torn country of Vietnam. Upon arriving, Mickey is abruptly shot and falls to the ground, with blood spilling out of his head. The film ends there. After the film was finished, Savage and Glaser shared it exclusively with their friends and associates, along with the occasional film festival screening, but that was rare. As mentioned earlier, many assume that, due to the political overtones, violent imagery, and use of their flagship icon, the film was taken down by Disney themselves. But this has actually never been proven, and given the lack of tangible evidence, it can be generally assumed that this is false. However, unknown as the reason for its disappearance may be, the film nevertheless faded away for about 40 years, until 2010, where it randomly reappeared at the Sarajevo Film Festival. In addition to this copy, it was also discovered that the filmmakers Coop in New York City held a copy in a 38-minute compilation of other short films. This compilation was available to rent, but only for organizations and film festivals, thus making it hard to actually be viewed by anybody. But then, suddenly in April of 2013, a YouTube user by the name of Abad Higgins discovered and uploaded the original version of Short Subject to YouTube. The short was missing its original soundtrack, but Abad Higgins took it upon himself to add System of a Down's Soldier Side intro on top of it. When asked about where he found it, Abad Higgins stated that he found it in a bin of scrapped films at college, and saved it from being destroyed. It was just sitting in there, How it got there and why is completely unknown. Thanks to the fear of the omnipresent eye of Disney, Abad Higgins deleted his original upload, fearing copyright-related trouble. Thankfully, multiple mirrors had been saved and uploaded to avoid it becoming lost media again. 5 years later, on July 31st, 2018, a YouTuber named CDCB2 discovered a VHS copy of the original shorts and uploaded it onto his channel, which contained the original soundtrack, as well as the missing title and ending cards. And thus, the search for the complete version of Short Subject, or Mickey Mouse in Vietnam, had been found. Despite rumors and the assumption that this is totally a thing they would do, it would seem that Disney was not officially involved in suppressing the film. It faded away naturally, and the only reason why Abad Higgins deleted his original upload was out of fear over what Disney might do. It remains unknown to this day how the film got in that scrap bin, and we'll probably never know why.